Hi everyone, my name is Nicholas and I'm currently doing a pastoral internship with this church. I would like to spend the next few minutes telling you about the abundant goodness of God in my life. So I grew up in a traditional church and I was never serious Christian growing up. I was involved in the music ministry, the leadership, and a bunch of other stuff, but still, my faith was lukewarm. I was also a part of the Navigators and an active member of the Boys Brigade 11th Company, serving as an officer, leading youths to Christ, and running events for the school. But still, my faith was lukewarm. I was never serious about anything, including my faith. To me then, being a Christian meant that I had to run camps, lead Bible study, play in the band, and do stuff that other Christians do. I'm not saying that these things are bad. My point is that to me, Christianity was nothing more than a list of things I have to do. And to be honest, it became more of a chore than anything else. Then I went to the army, again lukewarm in my faith. Served 2 years, got out, got a job as a personal trainer for a year, and then decided I wanted to do something else. So, 4 years ago, I moved to the UK to further my studies in nutrition. It was in a county called Surrey, and I was pursuing a 4-year degree. My first priority when I arrived there was to settle in first, and the second was to find a church I could plant myself in. As I was settling in, I saw a Hillsong Church poster in my uni facility publicizing about an upcoming event. So a group of friends and I decided to attend. And not long after, we found ourselves going back week after week. And one evening after service, we went to hang out at a bistro bar, and that's where I met a girl named Maria Jimenez. She was serving in the music ministry at that time, so we chatted and I told her that I was also interested in music. So eventually she asked me to audition and join the music team in Hillsong. And we got to know each other better and better and realized that we actually got along really well. So we started dating and got into a serious relationship. And one night we went out for dinner. I remember we had sushi. After that we went to a nearby bar, had some drinks, and close to midnight we decided to go home. And she asked me if I wanted to drive, so I said, okay, I'll drive. The intention was to drive straight home because we were planning to go hiking early next morning. But for some reason, we didn't go straight home and ended up going for a spin. And that's where we met with a tragic accident. I remember speeding. I remember approaching a bend, and I remember losing control of the car and crashing into the central reservation. And the next thing I remember, I was hanging upside down in a car, only held by my seatbelt. As I was regaining consciousness, I looked to my side, hoping to see Maria there as well, but she wasn't. And I called out her name. I looked at the back of the seat, hoping to find her there, and again she wasn't. So I struggled to undo my seatbelt. I crawled out of the car from the passenger side. And as I crawled out of the car, I saw a group of people gathering around someone that looked like Maria. I got to my feet and walked towards the crowd. And Maria was there, lying on the floor, groaning in agonizing pain. In shock, I knelt right beside her. As I gazed down, I saw her clothes torn apart and her thighs sustaining a huge, deep flesh wound. And I held her hand. I leaned forward to kiss her forehead, and I whispered, "Don't worry, everything is going to be alright." And soon after, the police and the medics arrived, and they had a chat with me and tested me for drugs and alcohol. I confessed that I had a few drinks. At that point, I thought that was it for me, that I was going to be charged with drink driving. I'm going to be blamed for crashing the car. And I thought, okay, I'm going to man up. I'm going to accept things as they are. Little did I know what was going to happen next. Minutes after, the test results came back to state that both drugs and alcohol were tested negative. I felt a little sense of relief, thinking that now I just have to answer to her parents for crashing the car. That relief, however, was short-lived when the paramedics came to tell me about Maria's condition. I asked if I could go with her to the hospital, but the police refused and insisted to send me to another hospital because they wanted to run more tests on me to make sure I was okay. So I accompanied the 3 officers that was with me in the ambulance on the way to a different hospital. And as I was in the ambulance, I thought to myself, Maria's injuries can't be that serious, right? I mean, I walked out unharmed. And shortly after, one of the officers sitting beside me received a radio call that went, "Tell the guy to prepare for the worst. It's not looking good on our side." And when the officer told me that, I said, "What do you mean it's not looking good? What was happening? Why do I need to prepare for the worst?" And that was when I started to really panic. And I was jittery and I was sweaty. And I remember this very clearly. The next radio call came in minutes later. The officer lowered the volume as she was listening. She turned to me, she shook her head and she said, "I'm sorry, she didn't make it." Upon hearing that, I completely broke down. I knelt to the floor of the ambulance and I said over and over, "What have I done? What have I done? What have I done? Please tell me this is not true." When the ambulance arrived at the hospital, they had to transport me on a wheelchair because I just wasn't capable of moving on my own. As they wheeled me in, I was screaming and I was groaning in despair, and they put me on for a scan. But I think they sedated me first because I remember falling asleep very quickly and only waking a few hours after. When I woke up, the police walked up to me and told me that I am under arrest for causing the death of Maria by dangerous driving. So they took me to the station. Not long after, a friend from church knew about it and came to bail me out. The next few months were the darkest moments of my life. The pain I felt was so overwhelming and intense. I just wanted it to end. And I thank God that I didn't take my own life. I know it's a selfish way out, but for me, that was the only way out. The shame and guilt that I felt. I mean, how can I ever forgive myself? But there was a couple who showed me love like no one else did. And they told me they forgave me. They told me they wanted to prosper my life. And the couple are the parents of Maria. Fernando and Elizabeth loved me like their own. I remember Fernando said this to me, "Son, the reason I forgive you is because I knew God before I knew my family." I mean, what a statement. I was speechless when I heard that. I cried. I said, "God, is this how much you've been loving me the whole time?" And for that once in my life, I experienced undeserved love. For the first time, I understood what unconditional love was. To be receiving love from someone that you don't deserve is honestly indescribable. And that kick-started my healing journey. Yes, there are tears and there are difficult times, but in those times, Fernando and Elizabeth were there for me. 8 months after the accident, I was charged with causing death by dangerous driving, and I was sentenced to prison. The prosecutor was actually pushing for a 15-year sentence, but by the grace of God, I only served about 2 years in prison. My brother, who at that time is also studying in the UK, came with Fernando and Elizabeth every week to see me. Prison is a very trying time, physically and mentally. I had so much time to myself, and certain hours of the day I just couldn't leave my cell. And that was such a dangerous position for me to be in. Trapped in my own mind, in my own darkness, helplessly replaying the accident over and over. And every time that happens, something miraculous also happens. Every time I get trapped in my own mind, suddenly the weight of God's presence would fall on me, over and over and over again. And I would always end up on my knees, crying and crying for hours, pouring my heart out to Him, and slowly, one encounter at a time, He heals, He mends, and He restores. For those of you who are hurting today, I say to you, never underestimate the restorative power of the Holy Spirit. Run to Him, cry out to Him, pour out your heart to Him, and watch Him do the impossible. Amen.